Hello, good people. Well, today I'm going to talk about the curiosity of the replace function inside of VBA. It does some curious things and just straight up some things it really shouldn't be doing. So let's not make the same mistakes that Marcus has made. Let's have a look at what it's doing and let's try and avoid what's happened in the past to me, and let's all learn from the experience. Okay, all right, so we're going to do something reasonably simple in Excel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find a particular item and I'm going to replace that item, and I'm going to do it inside of VBA. So here's one I prepared earlier. What I'm going to do is we're going to look for sports in this particular column, so we're in column B, and we're going to replace it with sport. Fairly simple thing to do. You might want to incorporate that as part of one of your procedures. So this is the specific code. So we want to, on the worksheet code name sheet 1, which is department, we want to go to range B7 to B30 and we want to replace sports with the term sport. So let's go back to our data set. Basically just this range, I've made it a little longer, and we want to just make that quick change. So it should specifically go into this area, replace sports with the term sport. You could also filter it, but let's go wild here and say it's part of our VBA process. Okay, let's roll this procedure. Okay, so I'll just minimize this guy. All right, so let's watch what's going on. All right, so we'll press F8 to kick her off. Okay, F8, all right, so the rubber's hitting the road right about now. So we should say specifically in that area, the data should be getting replaced. So I'll press F8 and see what happens. F8, bang. Okay, the data is now changed, yeah? And we've got similar information on the other sheet here. So in the channel sheet, you'll see that sports hasn't been changed or anything like that. So I might just change it back manually. So I'll just isolate this range, find sport, and replace with sports. So we'll replace all. Okay, now we're back to where we were before. All right, okay, let's have a look at the curiosity. Okay, so I've specifically said go to this range, replace sports with sport. Now we've got our sports back in play. Yeah, so they're in play. It's all tickety-boo. We want to do exactly the same thing. Okay, now let's say I'm going to be doing like something completely different. So I might come in and I go, oh, Africa, I want that to be Africa 01 or something silly like that. Okay, so I'll go, oh, I want it right across the workbook. So I'll go find, and I'll find Africa, and I want to replace it with, silly example, Africa 01. Yeah, all right, so I'll replace this across the workbook. All right, so let's replace all. Boom, there's 9 replacements, 3 here, and then probably some in here, Africa 1, perfect, excellent. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. Now I come back to my other procedure, which let's say new files come in. I want to place this bad boy again, sports, it's got to go back to sport, nice, it's part of my larger procedure. All right, so let's go into the back end of Excel and just stop the procedure. Okay, let's do this again. Okay, so worksheet code name, sheet 1, so that's our department sheet. So it should really only be changing the data from sports back to sport in column B, or more specifically from B7 to B30. All right, let's see how this bad boy performs second time round. So we'll say F8, and then rubber on road. Now, this specific range has got to change. Okay, so we'll press F8, boom, and boom out. Okay, so this has changed beautifully. Now, we just happen to go to this next sheet, and sport S is now gone. Now, that shouldn't happen. And that shouldn't happen for a range of reasons, predominantly because I've specifically specifically told it on worksheet department, change only B7 to B30. And I want that sports replaced to sport, but it's gone ahead and gone, you know what? We're just going to do it across the workbook because of this. So under options, this says workbook. Now, if you record a macro and have a look at the code behind it, whether this says workbook or worksheet is neither here nor there, because there is no trigger inside of the code to change this, to specifically say sheet. And at any rate, Excel goes off the reservation. It wouldn't matter whether it's sheet or workbook. It completely disrespects this part of the equation if it says workbook. Now, let me tell you about the specific example I found when working with an extremely important workbook. And I wanted to replace something not so generic as sports to sport. What I wanted to replace was a rather benign column that had a decimal place in it. And I wanted to replace that guy with nothing. I can't believe I'm laughing about this. This is not funny. Now, not knowing about this curiosity, or let's call it an anomaly inside of Excel, I've done a search or find and replace prior to running the code. And I've done it across the entire workbook. Let's call it some maintenance. So now my Control R is looking in the entire workbook. And little known to me now, even though that I've specifically said that the range has got to be in a very tight little range, Excel's going to perform in a very curious way. Now let's run my scenario across this specific range. Now it shouldn't find this. Now typically when it doesn't find anything, nothing happens. The code doesn't break. It just goes from the start of the code right through to the end. So let's say we want to replace the decimal place just in column B where there are none. Let's go old here, Marcus. I'll put a few decimal places at the back of this guy here. ... All right, and just so we've got something, and let's run this guy across this specific area with our workbook shown. All right, now this should have, let me be clear, this should have a profound impact on my model, little known to me. All right, so let's press F8. We're running, racing in the cup. Let's press F8 again. Rubbers firmly on the road. Let's press F8 one more time. Boom! Now we have a significant problem. Now, if you weren't looking for that specific problem and the decimal places, you might have been on a text sheet and it happened somewhere else, and you just happen to go and save the workbook. Now, save regularly. You will have a problem, and let's have a look. The problem's kind of replicated across our sheets. Oh, we've got a terrible problem in here. You can see the information has just washed straight across the workbook, and there is no way that I know of to specifically overwrite, even though this particular range is quite tight. It's gone and overridden that because the replace function is looking at the workbook, which is a concern. I think Microsoft, it's over to you. I think you really need to address that. There needs to be a more specific and tight way to deal with that situation, especially when a find and replace has been used prior to running some code. I think it's an anomaly. If anyone's got any ideas about, like, how it's happened or a workaround for it, all ears, guys. Love to hear your thoughts, but I just want you to learn from where I've been and try not to make some of the same mistakes. All right, everyone. That's pretty much all I wanted to share. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time, eh? Take it easy.